Yeah.
We can't even, well, we're expert in this and we can't even figure out quite what the numbers are. It's extraordinary. And it doesn't really matter where we look, because we're detecting things all the time.
Mm.
So if we look on online reviews, if we look at a company's registration resource, like Company's House, on obviously social media, I mean, it's always there. We can find them within seconds, frankly. So it becomes a question of two things, really. I mean, just how much is out there. We know pretty much what that is. It's thousands and thousands of businesses that are fraudulent or certainly dishonest in some form or another.